Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the world of Viking medicine, where the line between the mystical and the practical was thinner than you might expect. Picture yourself in a time where healing wasn't just about popping a pill, it was an immersive experience filled with herbs, rituals, and a fair amount of magic. You probably won't survive this if you've got a modern mindset. Viking remedies were a whole different ballgame. But don't worry, we'll ease into it all slowly, exploring the surprisingly relaxing methods they used to treat everything from aches and pains to a bit of a bad mood. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is over there. I'd love to know how far this Viking medicine journey is reaching. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Viking medicine, much like their ships, was a blend of practicality and mystery. In the absence of modern healthcare, Vikings turned to the land, the gods, and their ancestors for guidance in healing. Herbs, natural remedies, and old-fashioned methods became their go-to for treating wounds, sickness, and even mental health. And although there wasn't a Viking version of WebMD, they had something that modern medicine can sometimes lack: patience, respect for nature, and a willingness to trust in old wisdom. Let's start with the basics. The heart of Viking medicine, herbal remedies. Herbs like juniper, yarrow, and wormwood were integral to their healing practices, often used for both physical and spiritual ailments. Juniper berries, for instance, were a go-to for cleansing and detoxing the body. Vikings believed that burning juniper branches could purify their homes and their health. It wasn't just about smelling nice. They considered it a powerful way to ward off illness. Historians still argue about the extent to which Vikings practiced magical remedies alongside herbal treatments. Did they truly believe in the mystical power of herbs, or was it simply a form of placebo that worked because it was steeped in ritual? Either way, Viking medicine relied heavily on the natural world, and the herbs were often combined with rituals that could be just as calming as the remedies themselves. Interestingly, we don't know all the details of Viking medicine. Much of what we know comes from sagas, runic inscriptions, and the accounts of other cultures. But the fact remains that their connection to nature was paramount, and their remedies were as much about bringing balance to the body as they were about invoking the spirits of the past. When you dig into Viking medicine, you start to realize it wasn't just about curing illness, it was about restoring harmony. And that's what sets Viking healing apart from modern medicine. Instead of seeing the body as a system of parts to fix, the Vikings saw it as part of a larger, interconnected whole. Healing wasn't just about the physical body, it was about the spirit, the mind, and even the environment. Now that we've had a glimpse into the world of Viking herbalism, let's dive a little deeper into the rituals that surrounded healing in Viking society. Imagine a Viking healer, maybe a woman known as a Velva, standing in front of a fire, chanting as she prepares a tincture or brew from plants gathered from the forest. The air smells of herbs, smoke, and something ancient, a sense of calm that wraps around you like a blanket. But these healing rituals weren't all about the herbs. They also involved deep spiritual beliefs, invoking the gods and ancestors in an attempt to restore balance and health. Viking healing wasn't just about physical remedies. They believed illness was often caused by spiritual or supernatural forces. Sickness could be the result of a curse or bad luck, not just bacteria or viruses. That's why a lot of Viking healing involved rituals meant to placate the gods or spirits, or to ward off evil. Healing was an intricate dance between the physical and spiritual, the world of humans and the world of the gods. One of the most famous Viking healing practices was the use of the magical practices connected to the gods. The Velva would perform rituals, often involving chanting, offerings, and even sacrifices, to call upon the powers of the gods for help in healing the sick. There wasn't just about healing the body, it was also about restoring the balance of the individual's soul and spirit. Some scholars argue that there was also a way to invoke a calming sense of control, a psychological anchor for the healer and the patient. Vikings were well aware of the mind-body connection, even if they didn't fully understand it the way we do today. Historians still argue about how much Viking medicine was influenced by their interactions with other cultures, especially through trade. The Vikings traveled far and wide, from the British Isles to the Middle East, and were exposed to different healing practices, some of which likely influenced their own methods. But despite these influences, Viking healing methods remained distinctly tied to their own cultural and spiritual beliefs. While herbs and magic were their primary tools, the Vikings also relied on their sense of community. Healing wasn't an isolated event, it was something done in collaboration with others, usually in the presence of family or the local village. Viking rituals weren't all about healing physical wounds, they also had deeply calming effects on the mind. The chanting, the use of soothing herbs like lavender and sage, and the connection to the natural world all contributed to a sense of relaxation that we might liken to today's mindfulness practices. In many ways, their approach to healing was holistic. Body, mind, and spirit were all part of the same whole, and though we might think of their world as harsh and violent, there was something deeply calming about how the Vikings handled illness. Their rituals provided a sense of hope, of connection, and of trust in the natural world. While we don't have Viking recordings of every ritual or remedy, we know from historical accounts and archaeology that these practices were very much a part of their daily life. Healing wasn't just a physical act, it was also a spiritual journey, one that aimed to restore harmony to the individual and the community. And in many ways, these healing rituals continue to captivate us because they remind us of something that's often lost in modern medicine: the ability to heal, not just the body, but the mind and spirit as well. Now that we've explored the spiritual and ritualistic aspects of Viking healing, let's turn our attention to one of the more down-to-earth aspects of their medicine: herbal remedies. These remedies were the cornerstone of Viking healthcare, blending the knowledge of nature with the care of the body. Imagine yourself in a Viking village, where the scent of crushed leaves and earthy herbs lingers in the air. You're surrounded by a deep forest teeming with plants, all of which have a purpose, whether for healing, cooking, or creating something beautiful. The Vikings had a deep understanding of their environment, and used the plants around them to treat just about anything that could go wrong with the body. Herbs like yarrow, juniper, and wormwood were essential to Viking medicine. Yarrow, for example, was a go-to herb for wound healing. It has natural antiseptic properties, making it perfect for cleaning and closing up cuts and scrapes. Vikings would crush the leaves and apply them directly to wounds, a practice that, if you think about it, is remarkably effective even by modern standards. What's interesting is that yarrow wasn't just used for its physical properties, it was also believed to have spiritual significance. Yarrow was said to ward off evil spirits, and so it was used in rituals to protect warriors before they went into battle. Juniper, too, was an essential herb in Viking medicine. Its berries were used in a variety of ways, from making medicinal teas to creating perfumes. Juniper was believed to have purifying properties, and the Vikings often burned juniper branches to cleanse their homes and bodies. The smoke was thought to drive away illness and negative energy. Historians still argue whether the Vikings fully understood the medicinal properties of juniper, or whether its use was rooted more in superstition. Regardless of the reason, juniper was a staple in Viking healing. Wormwood, another common Viking herb, was used for a different purpose. Vikings would use wormwood to treat digestive issues, as it was believed to have a calming effect on the stomach. It was often brewed into a tea and consumed to ease indigestion or nausea. Wormwood was also a key ingredient in the making of certain types of alcohol, which the Vikings would consume not just for pleasure, but also for its supposed medicinal benefits. The Vikings knew how to mix their remedies with a bit of fun. It's fascinating to think about how these simple herbs had such a profound impact on Viking health and well-being. Their understanding of plants was more than just a practical skill, it was a way of life. The Vikings had an intimate connection with their environment, and they used that connection to improve their lives in ways that we still admire today. In fact, many of these herbs are still used in modern herbal medicine, a testament to the Vikings' ingenuity and connection to nature. Historians often debate the extent to which the Vikings understood the science behind their remedies. While they may not have had the knowledge of biochemistry or microbiology that we have today, they were keen observers of the natural world. Their use of herbs and plants was based on trial and error, and over time they learned which plants worked and which ones didn't. There was no formal science behind it, just generations of knowledge passed down through families and communities. The beauty of Viking herbalism lies in its simplicity. The remedies were not complex, and the ingredients were readily available. It's a reminder that healing doesn't always have to be complicated. Sometimes the best remedies come from the earth itself, just waiting to be discovered. As we look back on the Viking approach to medicine, it's clear that their understanding of plants and nature was far ahead of its time. The Vikings were not just fierce warriors, they were skilled healers who knew how to live in harmony with the world around them. We've now explored the herbal wonders of Viking medicine, but let's pause for a moment to look at a quieter, more subtle aspect of their healing practices: the remedies that the Vikings used to help them sleep. In a world that didn't have the luxury of a warm, comfortable bed and soft pillows, Vikings had their own methods of unwinding after a long day of fighting, farming, or trading. Imagine the scent of pine and wood smoke lingering in the cold night air as you prepare for sleep, your body aching but your mind calm and at ease, thanks to the gentle remedies passed down through generations. Vikings, like anyone who spent a day in physical labor, needed rest, and they had a few tricks to ensure that it came easily. One of the most important Viking sleep aids was the use of valerian root. Valerian, with its calming properties, was commonly used by the Vikings as a natural remedy for insomnia and anxiety. They would make a tea out of the root, or use it in bath water to help relax their muscles and minds. You can imagine how this herb would be particularly useful for Vikings after a hard day of work or battle, helping them wind down and relax before sleeping under the stars or in a modest longhouse. Valerian's calming effects have been known for centuries, and while modern medicine has certainly evolved, this humble herb continues to be a popular remedy for sleep issues today. Historians still argue whether valerian was the Vikings' sole remedy for sleep, or if they incorporated other natural aids like lavender and chamomile into their routines as well. What we do know is that the Vikings were very much in tune with nature, and they would have used whatever was available to them to enhance their quality of life. As you settle down for sleep, picture a Viking resting their tired body, their senses soothed by the gentle aroma of a calming herbal infusion. The rituals surrounding sleep, much like other Viking healing practices, had a soothing rhythm. Each night, the same calming routines would help prepare them for the rest they desperately needed. But Viking sleep aids weren't just about physical remedies, they were about creating an atmosphere that promoted relaxation. In their homes, the Vikings would burn herbs like lavender and sage to purify the air and promote calm. The scent of these herbs would linger in the room, encouraging deep, restorative sleep. And while this was certainly a functional part of their health practices, it was also deeply rooted in their spiritual beliefs. Vikings believed that the quality of one's sleep was connected to the spiritual well-being of the individual. After all, the gods had to be appeased, and they couldn't rest easy if a person's mind was in turmoil. It's interesting to think about how Viking beliefs and healing practices intertwined in such a natural way. For them, healing wasn't just about fixing a physical ailment, it was about creating a holistic environment for well-being. The rituals surrounding sleep were no different. They sought to create a space where both the body and spirit could rest. And while our modern sleep aids often come in the form of synthetic pills or high-tech solutions, the Vikings found their peace in nature and the rhythms of life around them. Even the act of going to bed was part of the Viking healing process. Picture yourself settling in for the night. You've bathed in a soothing herbal mixture, perhaps with the soft light of a fire still flickering in the corner of your longhouse. The air smells of herbs and wood smoke, and the sound of the wind outside provides a calming backdrop to your thoughts. It's easy to imagine how this peaceful ritual would help the Vikings sleep soundly and restore their energy for the next day's journey, whether that meant heading out on a long voyage or tending to the land. Historians and modern researchers alike still argue about the precise methods Vikings used for their nighttime routines and how widespread these practices were among different Viking societies. But one thing is clear: Vikings had their own wonderfully natural way of achieving rest. Their sleep aids were rooted in the same deep respect for nature and balance that informed so much of their culture, making their healing practices far more than just medicinal. For the Vikings, health was a matter of body, mind, and spirit. Each night, they rested not only their bodies, but also their souls. As we continue our exploration of Viking medicine, let's take a closer look at how the Vikings approached pain, something we can all relate to at one time or another. Pain, whether from battle wounds, illness, or the daily wear and tear of life, was a constant companion for the Vikings. But they had a remarkably effective set of remedies for dealing with it. And no, they didn't just drink mead and call it a day. The Vikings had an arsenal of natural painkillers that were surprisingly effective and soothing, many of which we still use today in some form. One of the most common pain relief methods used by the Vikings was the application of willow bark. Willow bark contains salicin, a compound that is chemically similar to aspirin, and it was widely used for its analgesic and anti-inflammatory properties. The Vikings would chew on willow bark or brew it into a tea, using it to ease joint pain, headaches, and even the aches and pains that came from long voyages or hard physical labor. In some ways, the Vikings were ahead of their time, having discovered the pain-relieving qualities of willow bark long before modern medicine isolated the active ingredient to create aspirin. Historians still argue whether the Vikings fully understood the chemical properties of willow bark, or if they simply relied on the fact that it worked. What we do know is that the Vikings were keen observers of their environment, and they had learned through trial and error that willow bark could provide significant relief. And like many of their other remedies, it wasn't just about the physical relief it provided. The act of using willow bark was also part of a larger ritual. It was a way of restoring balance to the body, something that the Vikings believed was just as important as treating the pain itself. In addition to willow bark, the Vikings also used other plants for pain relief, such as ginger and juniper. Ginger, known for its anti-inflammatory properties, was often consumed as a tea or mixed with other herbs to treat pain associated with muscle soreness or digestive discomfort. Juniper, as we've seen before, was a multi-purpose herb that had both physical and spiritual uses. Its berries were used in concoctions to treat everything from pain to fatigue, with some even believing that the herb had the power to ward off the spirits that caused illness in the first place. Juniper was also burned to cleanse the air, and its smoke was thought to carry away the negative energy that might cause pain or disease. Pain relief in Viking society wasn't just about the plants, it was also about the rituals that accompanied them. Just as they believed that illness could be caused by spiritual imbalance, the Vikings thought that pain could have a spiritual root. Therefore, healing was not just about using plants and remedies, it was about restoring harmony to the body and soul. Viking healers, especially those who practiced Seidr, the ancient Viking magic, would often perform rituals to accompany the administration of herbs and pain relief treatments. They would chant, sing, and even perform dances that were believed to draw healing energy from the gods and nature. These rituals were calming in themselves, often creating a sense of peace and comfort that helped ease the mind and body. The Vikings were also known for their resilience in the face of pain. Their warrior culture emphasized stoicism, and the ability to endure hardship was highly valued. However, this doesn't mean they simply ignored their pain. Instead, they found ways to manage it and keep going, whether through herbal remedies, spiritual practices, or simply pushing through with sheer willpower. Pain was seen as part of life, but it wasn't something that had to be suffered alone. The Vikings had a communal approach to healing, where friends, family, and fellow warriors would come together to support each other through illness and injury. Healing, much like their entire way of life, was about collaboration and connection. Even though we have more advanced methods of pain relief today, there's something deeply calming about the Viking approach to pain. Their reliance on nature, the belief in restoring balance, and the support of community all contributed to their unique and effective methods of dealing with pain. There's a certain peace that comes from knowing that the Vikings, despite their tough exteriors, had a healing tradition that was rooted in natural remedies, spiritual belief, and above all, a respect for the body's ability to heal itself. As we reflect on their pain relief methods, it's important to remember that healing for the Vikings wasn't just about taking medicine, it was about creating a space where the body, mind, and spirit could all come back into balance. Whether it was willow bark for the body or a chant for the soul, their remedies were as much about restoring peace within as they were about easing physical pain. and in that sense, their approach to healing was surprisingly modern, embracing both the physical and emotional aspects of well-being. As we move forward in our exploration of Viking medicine, let's now shift our focus to something a little less expected: Viking beauty secrets. While we often think of Vikings as hardened warriors who valued strength and battle prowess above all else, the truth is that they also placed a great deal of importance on personal appearance and hygiene. In a world where daily life was filled with dirt, battle, and physical labor, the Vikings made time for grooming, and they had a number of beauty treatments that were surprisingly sophisticated and calming in their own way. One of the key elements of Viking beauty was the use of natural oils. These oils were not just for keeping the skin soft and smooth, they were also believed to have therapeutic properties. Vikings would use oils extracted from plants like lavender, juniper, and even animal fats to hydrate and nourish their skin. Lavender, in particular, was prized for its calming and soothing effects, both on the skin and the mind. It was used in a variety of ways, added to baths, rubbed into the skin after a long day, or used as a fragrant oil in the home to create a peaceful atmosphere. Historians still argue whether the Vikings knew about the specific therapeutic properties of these oils, or if they simply believed in their ability to ward off illness and promote a sense of well-being. However, the fact that they used them regularly suggests they were more in tune with their environment and the benefits of natural resources than we might expect. Their beauty routines were not based on vanity, they were about self-care, relaxation, and creating an environment that encouraged overall health and balance. Juniper oil, for example, was another popular beauty treatment in Viking culture. Beyond its well-known use for purification, juniper was used to treat the skin and promote clear complexion. Vikings believed that by massaging juniper oil into the skin, they could ward off the negative energies that might lead to illness, or even acne. Not only was this beneficial for skin health, but the calming scent of juniper had the added benefit of helping Vikings relax, something that was especially important after a long day of labor or a grueling battle. The Vikings also used a variety of other plant-based beauty treatments, including honey and birch sap. Honey was widely regarded for its antibacterial properties, and the Vikings used it in both food and beauty rituals. They would apply honey masks to their skin to soften and smooth it, or mix it into baths to help rejuvenate the body after a long, hard day. Birch sap, too, was often used in beauty routines. The Vikings would apply it to their skin to reduce inflammation and promote a healthy complexion. These natural treatments were not just about looking good, they were about healing, relaxation, and restoring balance to the body. While we may think of beauty as a purely cosmetic pursuit today, for the Vikings, beauty rituals were deeply tied to health and wellness. A well-groomed body was one that was cared for, both physically and spiritually. Vikings were well aware of the importance of self-care, not just for looking good, but for feeling good. Their beauty routines were calming, soothing, and designed to help them feel connected to nature and their environment. Even the act of grooming itself was a form of relaxation. Vikings had grooming tools like combs made from bone or wood, which they would use to maintain their hair and beards. The rhythmic act of combing hair, or washing the body with herbs, could be incredibly soothing, a moment of calm in an otherwise chaotic life. This was not a rushed, frantic task, but something done with intention and care. Grooming was a form of self-respect, and in some ways, a way of connecting with their ancestors, who had also placed importance on personal appearance. Historians and anthropologists have pointed out that the Vikings were more advanced in their beauty rituals than we often give them credit for. They had an understanding of hygiene and self-care that was ahead of its time, and their beauty routines were often as much about spiritual balance and well-being as they were about aesthetics. By incorporating natural oils, herbs and other remedies into their beauty rituals, the Vikings were taking care of themselves in a holistic way, paying attention to the body, the mind, and the spirit. As we reflect on Viking beauty, it's easy to see how their self-care rituals fit into their broader approach to health. Everything they did, from healing herbs to personal grooming, was about restoring balance and achieving harmony. The Vikings understood that true beauty came from within, but that taking care of oneself physically was a vital part of maintaining that balance. Their beauty secrets weren't just about vanity, they were about healing, relaxation, and the restoration of harmony in all aspects of life. Now that we've looked at how the Vikings cared for their bodies and minds with beauty treatments and sleep aids, it's time to dive into an area of Viking medicine that combined both the physical, spiritual healing. The Vikings, much like other ancient cultures, believed that the body's health wasn't only impacted by physical factors, but also by the invisible forces of the world around them. Disease, pain, and misfortune were often seen as the result of spiritual or supernatural imbalances, and it was common for Viking healers to turn to the gods, spirits, and ancient rituals to restore balance to the soul as well as the body. At the heart of Viking spiritual healing was the practice of seether, a form of Norse magic that was believed to allow practitioners to access the spiritual world. Seether was primarily practiced by women, often referred to as velva or seeresses, who would enter a trance-like state and communicate with the gods or the spirits of the land. They believed that by doing so, they could not only predict the future, but also heal the sick, remove curses, and restore balance to an individual's life. This practice involved chanting, dancing, and making offerings to the gods, actions that were deeply connected to the Vikings' spiritual and physical well-being. Historians still argue about how much of Viking medicine was truly magical versus practical. Some suggest that seether and other spiritual healing practices were just as much about providing comfort and emotional relief as they were about invoking divine power. Whether they were truly channeling the gods or simply offering the sick a sense of hope and ritual, it's clear that these practices had a profound impact on Viking society. The very act of engaging in these rituals would have brought peace to the troubled mind and spirit, allowing the person to rest easier and heal more effectively. There's a kind of calm that comes with rituals, whether or not they have supernatural powers, and the Vikings knew this well. Beyond seether, Vikings also practiced other forms of spiritual healing, including offerings to the gods. It was common for Viking warriors, before going into battle, to make offerings to gods like Odin or Thor, asking for strength, protection, and healing. These rituals were seen not only as ways to protect oneself physically, but also as ways to secure spiritual well-being. The Vikings believed that health, strength, and victory were gifts granted by the gods, and it was important to maintain a good relationship with them through offerings and rituals. Viking spiritual healing also involved making offerings to the spirits of the land. In Viking culture, the land was seen as alive with spirits, and it was important to keep these spirits content in order to stay healthy. If a Viking felt ill, they might consult a healer or a velva, who would perform a ritual to communicate with the spirits of the earth. This might involve making an offering, like food or drink, to the land spirits, asking for their help in restoring the individual's health. This sense of connection to nature and the spirits of the earth is another example of how deeply intertwined Viking medicine was with their spiritual beliefs. What's fascinating about Viking spiritual healing is how it demonstrates their holistic view of health. Vikings didn't just treat the body in isolation, they believed that the body, mind, and spirit were all interconnected. If one was out of balance, it would affect the others. This is why the Vikings practiced both physical remedies, like herbs and oils, and spiritual practices, like seether and offerings. Healing wasn't just about addressing the physical symptoms, it was about restoring balance to every part of the individual. The Vikings' spiritual healing practices were a reflection of their larger worldview, one where nature, gods, and spirits all played an active role in maintaining harmony. They saw themselves as part of a larger cosmic system, and healing was about aligning oneself with that system. Even today, we can see echoes of this Viking perspective in modern healing practices that emphasize the mind-body connection and the importance of spirituality in well-being. As we reflect on the role of spiritual healing in Viking medicine, it's clear that their approach to health was not only pragmatic, but also deeply philosophical. By turning to the gods and the spirits, the Vikings created a sense of comfort and peace that went beyond just physical remedies. Their healing rituals weren't just about fixing what was broken, they were about restoring a sense of balance to every part of their lives. And in many ways, that's what makes Viking medicine so uniquely soothing, its focus on the whole person, rather than just the symptoms. Now that we've explored how Vikings blended spiritual practices with physical remedies, let's turn our attention to one of the more practical aspects of Viking medicine, their first aid kits. Imagine you're out on a Viking voyage, or perhaps in the midst of a battle, and you sustain an injury. What do? You can't just pop into the nearest pharmacy or call for an ambulance. Instead, the Vikings relied on their ingenuity and resourcefulness to handle injuries and minor illnesses. What we know today as a first aid kit would have been far simpler in the Viking age, but just as essential. Viking first aid often consisted of a combination of basic medical tools and natural remedies. Vikings carried with them simple items like knives for cutting herbs or skin, leather bandages, and wooden splints. They also kept a variety of herbal medicines and potions for treating common ailments, everything from wounds and burns to digestive issues. The most common injuries among Vikings were battle wounds, so it's no surprise that they had developed techniques for treating cuts, bruises, and broken bones. But they also had remedies for everyday mishaps, like sprains, stomachaches, and headaches. One of the most common first aid treatments used by Vikings was the application of crushed plants to open wounds. Many of the plants they used had antiseptic properties, preventing infection and helping the wound to heal. For example, they would use yarrow, which is known for its ability to stop bleeding and promote healing. Vikings knew that yarrow was effective in treating open cuts and wounds, so they would often crush the leaves and apply them directly to the injury. In addition to its healing properties, yarrow was also used in rituals to protect warriors before they went into battle, as it was believed to offer spiritual protection as well. Viking first aid kits also included poultices made from a variety of plants. These poultices were mixtures of crushed herbs or roots that could be applied to the skin to treat a variety of ailments. For example, the Vikings used a poultice made from juniper berries to treat bruises or sprains. Juniper's anti-inflammatory properties made it an ideal remedy for soothing swollen areas. Similarly, a mixture of comfrey root was used to heal broken bones. Comfrey is still known today for its ability to aid bone and tissue regeneration. Another common item in a Viking first aid kit was salt. Salt was not only used for seasoning food, but was also a critical part of Viking medicine. Salt's antiseptic properties made it an excellent choice for cleaning wounds and preventing infection. Vikings would often rinse cuts and abrasions with salt water to ensure that they wouldn't become infected. Salt was also used in preserving food, but when it came to treating injuries, it acted as a basic but effective disinfectant. Historians still argue whether Viking first aid practices were as effective as those in modern times, or if their techniques were purely based on trial and error. There's no doubt that their first aid methods were based on practical experience and a deep connection to nature, but it's unclear how much they understood the scientific basis for why these treatments worked. What we do know is that Viking first aid kits were essential for survival in a harsh and unforgiving world. Whether they were tending to a warrior's battle wound or treating a child's sore throat, the Vikings were highly resourceful when it came to healthcare. Perhaps the most striking thing about Viking first aid was how simple and accessible it was. There was no need for fancy tools or medical technology, just basic knowledge of plants, practical materials, and the willingness to experiment. The Vikings didn't rely on highly specialized treatments. Instead, they used what was available to them in the natural world, creating remedies that were effective and comforting. These remedies might not have had the scientific backing that we have today, but they were grounded in a deep understanding of the environment and a respect for the healing power of nature. As we consider Viking first aid in the context of their broader medical practices, it becomes clear that healing wasn't just about treating an injury, it was about managing and adapting to the challenges of life. The Vikings didn't have the luxury of modern medicine, so they had to make do with what they had. But in many ways, their approach to first aid was more holistic than our own. They didn't just treat the injury, they understood that healing required patience, care, and often a little bit of magic to restore balance to the body and mind. Now that we've taken a look at Viking first aid, it's time to delve into another vital aspect of their health: stress and anxiety. In today's world, stress is often seen as an inevitable part of life, but for the Vikings, dealing with stress wasn't just about managing deadlines or navigating complicated social networks. No, for the Vikings, stress was about the daily grind of survival, whether that meant the fear of battle, the strain of long journeys, or the weight of leadership. How did they cope with this stress? Much like their approach to healing physical ailments, the Vikings had natural remedies and practices to ease their troubled minds. One of the primary ways the Vikings managed stress was through a combination of physical activity and relaxation. After a long day of farming, fighting or sailing, physical exertion was a great way to release built-up tension. We might think of Vikings as being in a constant state of battle, but much of their time was spent in physical labor that required stamina and endurance. Think chopping wood, navigating ships, and tending to animals. This level of physical activity was a form of natural stress relief. There's something remarkably calming about physical exertion. It releases endorphins, reduces cortisol, and leaves you feeling satisfied and at ease. For the Vikings, this meant that much of their daily routines naturally alleviated stress. However, not all Viking stress relief came from hard work. The Vikings also relied on rituals and natural remedies to calm their minds. One such remedy was the use of calming herbal teas. Herbs like chamomile, valerian, and lavender were commonly brewed into teas to relax the body and ease anxiety. Chamomile, in particular, was a favorite among Vikings because of its gentle sedative properties. After a long day of hard work or a nerve-wracking journey, Vikings would sip a cup of chamomile tea to wind down and prepare for sleep. These herbs were often used in combination with other natural ingredients, and drinking them was a calming ritual that allowed the Vikings to reset their bodies and minds. Lavender, like chamomile, was another key player in Viking stress management. The Vikings would use lavender oil for a variety of purposes, not just for its soothing effects on the skin, but also for its ability to ease anxiety and promote relaxation. Lavender's scent was often used in homes and longhouses to create a calming atmosphere. Whether used in baths, on the skin, or in the air, the soothing aroma of lavender was believed to help the Vikings de-stress and unwind. In the midst of a hard, demanding day, a few moments spent inhaling the calming fragrance of lavender could provide the relaxation needed to continue forward. Historians still argue about whether Viking stress management techniques were purely based on the availability of local herbs and natural remedies, or if they had a deeper understanding of the physiological effects of these plants. One thing that seems clear is that, just like us, the Vikings recognized that stress needed to be managed in order to maintain good health. But while we might reach for a bottle of medication, the Vikings turned to what nature provided to them. This connection to the land, coupled with their reliance on community and rituals, was a source of comfort and support. Another way the Vikings relieved stress was through their social structures. Viking society placed a strong emphasis on community. This meant that social interactions, whether with family, friends, or fellow warriors, provided a form of emotional support. They would gather around the fire at the end of a long day, share stories, sing songs, and participate in communal rituals. The act of coming together as a community helped relieve the isolation and anxiety that might come from the harsh realities of their daily lives. Even the act of storytelling, whether telling tales of past battles, gods, or personal victories, was a way for the Vikings to bond and lighten the load of daily stress. The Vikings also used music as a tool for relaxation. The sound of music, whether through the use of instruments or song, was incredibly therapeutic for them. Songs and chants were not only used in rituals and religious ceremonies, but they were also a way to ease tension and build camaraderie. Imagine a group of Vikings sitting around the hearth, listening to the soothing tones of a lyre or a simple chant. These moments of music and relaxation were integral to their stress management techniques, providing a calming escape from the physical and mental challenges of their world. In many ways, the Vikings' approach to stress management was as holistic as their approach to physical health. They understood that the body and mind needed to be in balance in order to function at their best. The Vikings didn't just rely on herbs and rituals, they also knew the importance of community, physical exertion, and music in maintaining mental health. In this way, their methods of dealing with stress were ahead of their time, emphasizing the importance of both the physical and emotional aspects of well-being. As we reflect on the Viking approach to stress, we're reminded that stress relief doesn't always have to come from complicated or modern solutions. Sometimes, the most effective remedies are the simplest ones: a good workout, a calming cup of tea, a chat with a friend, or the sound of music. The Vikings understood this well, and their stress management practices were a reflection of their deep connection to the natural world and to each other. Now that we've explored the Viking way of handling stress and mental health, let's turn our attention to the Vikings' diet and its role in their health. We often associate Vikings with their fierce warriors and epic sea voyages, but their food was an integral part of their physical well-being. The Vikings didn't have supermarkets stocked with processed foods or quick fixes for hunger. Instead, their diet was rooted in natural, locally sourced ingredients that fueled their bodies and kept them going through long days of labor, travel, and battle. The Viking diet was a reflection of their environment. Living in a harsh northern climate, the Vikings had to adapt to their surroundings. They ate a lot of fish, meat, and dairy, foods that were high in protein and fat, which helped them stay strong and survive long winters. But they didn't just eat whatever they could catch or grow. Their diet was carefully balanced to provide them with the nutrients they needed to thrive. Fish, particularly herring and salmon, played a big role in the Viking diet. These fish were rich in omega-3 fatty acids, which are essential for maintaining healthy brain function, reducing inflammation, and keeping the heart in good shape. Vikings would catch fish in abundance during the summer months, preserving them by salting or drying them so they could be eaten throughout the colder months. These preserved fish were an essential part of their winter diet, providing a valuable source of nutrition during the long dark days of winter. Meat was also an important part of the Viking diet. Vikings raised livestock such as cattle, pigs, and sheep, which provided them with a steady supply of protein. The meat was often preserved by smoking or salting, allowing it to last throughout the year. Vikings also hunted wild game, including deer and elk, which added variety to their diet. The high protein content of their diet, combined with the fats from the animals they ate, gave Vikings the energy they needed to endure long days of work or battle. Dairy products like milk, cheese, and butter were staples in Viking households. These foods were rich in calcium, which helped support bone health and prevent deficiencies during the long winter months when fresh fruits and vegetables were harder to come by. The Vikings made butter and cheese from the milk of their cows and goats, often storing these foods for the winter months when fresh milk wasn't available. The practice of fermenting milk into yogurt and other dairy products was also common, which helped with digestion and added beneficial probiotics to their diet. Historians still argue about the exact nutritional balance of the Viking diet, and whether it was more influenced by the needs of their warriors or the practicalities of farming and fishing. What we do know is that their diet was designed to keep them strong and healthy, able to survive the harsh conditions they faced. Their food wasn't just about satisfying hunger, it was about nourishing the body in a way that supported both their physical strength and mental clarity. The Vikings knew that what they ate played a vital role in their overall well-being, and they took care to choose foods that would sustain them throughout their long, demanding lives. But it wasn't just about meat and fish. The Vikings also ate a variety of grains and vegetables. Barley, oats, and rye were common grains that Vikings used to make bread, porridge, and beer. Vegetables like cabbage, onions, and leeks were also staples in their diet, providing them with important vitamins and minerals. Fruits like apples, berries, and plums were eaten when in season, offering a burst of sweetness and nutrients. While the Viking diet wasn't as rich in fruits and vegetables as modern diets, they still made use of the produce they had available to them, preserving fruits for winter and relying on root vegetables to get through the colder months. Viking food wasn't just about survival, it was also about community. Meals were often shared with family and fellow warriors, creating a sense of connection and camaraderie. The Vikings were known for their feasts, where food was abundant, and the bonds of fellowship were strengthened over shared meals. These gatherings were more than just opportunities to eat. They were moments of celebration, where stories were told, songs were sung, and people came together to renew their spirits. In a society as harsh as that of the Vikings, food was a key element in maintaining not just physical health, but social well-being as well. The Viking approach to food and nutrition was a far cry from today's fast-paced, convenience-based culture. They relied on natural whole foods to sustain their bodies and minds. While we might not be able to replicate the Viking diet in its entirety, there's much we can learn from their approach to eating. The Vikings understood that food wasn't just about satisfying hunger, it was about fueling the body for the long journey ahead, whether that journey was across the seas, through the forest, or into battle. Their diet, like their medicine, was simple, natural, and effective, a reminder that sometimes the best remedies come from the earth itself. Now that we've examined how diet played an essential role in Viking health, it's time to focus on one of the more practical and surprisingly modern elements of Viking medicine: herbal teas. While the Vikings might not have had the comfort of modern tea bags or pre-packaged blends, they had an intimate knowledge of the plants around them and made use of a wide variety of herbs to brew soothing teas that helped with everything from digestion to sleep. Picture yourself in a cozy Viking longhouse, the fire crackling softly in the background as you sip on a warm cup of tea made from herbs that have been carefully gathered from the forest just outside. These teas, while simple, were an essential part of Viking life. One of the most popular herbs used for tea was chamomile. Chamomile has been used for centuries for its calming properties, and the Vikings certainly knew how to make use of this versatile plant. Chamomile tea was often consumed before bedtime to promote relaxation and help the Vikings wind down after a long, stressful day. Chamomile has mild sedative properties that soothe the nerves and calm the mind, making it the perfect remedy for those who needed help easing into sleep. The Vikings, who had to contend with long days of physical labor and the constant stress of their warrior lifestyle, found comfort in this simple, soothing brew. Just like today, chamomile tea was used to ease tension and bring a sense of calm. Another popular herb in Viking teas was valerian root. This herb has a long history of being used as a natural remedy for sleep disorders, and the Vikings likely brewed it into a tea to help with insomnia or anxiety. Valerian has a strong earthy taste and is known for its calming effects on the nervous system. After a long day of fighting, sailing or farming, the Vikings would drink a cup of valerian tea to help them relax and prepare for a restful night's sleep. The calming nature of valerian made it an essential part of their evening rituals, helping to ensure that they got the restorative sleep they needed to face the challenges of the following day. Historians still argue about how extensively the Vikings used herbal teas for medicinal purposes. While some believe that the Vikings' reliance on herbal teas was more symbolic, part of a larger ritual of healing, others suggest that they had a deeper understanding of the physiological effects of these plants. What we do know is that herbal teas were a crucial part of Viking self-care. The act of brewing a warm, soothing drink, whether to calm the body or to alleviate an ailment, was both practical and comforting. It's a practice that many of us still rely on today. In addition to chamomile and valerian, the Vikings also made teas from other herbs like mint, thyme, and nettles. Mint was used for its refreshing digestive properties, and it was often brewed into a tea to help settle an upset stomach after a hearty meal. Thyme was another herb that was frequently used for its antibacterial and anti-inflammatory properties. A cup of thyme tea could help soothe a sore throat or clear a cough. Nettle tea, made from the leaves of the stinging nettle plant, was another popular remedy among the Vikings. Nettle has been used for centuries to treat a variety of ailments, including joint pain, and the Vikings would brew it into a tea to help ease inflammation and promote overall health. The use of herbal teas in Viking medicine was far from a random practice. It was rooted in a deep understanding of the plants around them. Vikings learned which herbs worked best for specific ailments through trial and error, passing down this knowledge from one generation to the next. There was a kind of wisdom in the way the Vikings used plants to heal, not just as a cure for illness, but as a means of restoring balance and harmony to the body and mind. This holistic approach to healing was one of the key factors that made Viking medicine so effective. It wasn't just about treating symptoms, it was about creating an environment where the body could naturally heal itself. Interestingly, Viking teas were not just about healing, they were also a social activity. Imagine a cold evening with the wind howling outside, and a group of Vikings gathered around a fire. As they sip their herbal teas, they share stories, laugh, and bond. Tea time was more than just a chance to get a little bit of relief from an ailment. It was a time for connection. In many ways, it was as much about the emotional and social benefits of gathering together as it was about the medicinal properties of the herbs. These tea rituals reinforced community ties and provided comfort during difficult times. What makes the Viking use of herbal teas particularly soothing is how simple and natural their remedies were. There were no complicated concoctions or fancy formulas, just plants gathered from the earth, prepared with care, and consumed in a peaceful setting. In today's fast-paced world, we often turn to artificial solutions for our ailments, but the Vikings remind us of the power of simplicity and the healing properties that nature provides. Their reliance on herbal teas, is a testament to their deep connection with the natural world and their understanding of the importance of slowing down and taking care of oneself. Having explored the soothing benefits of herbal teas, let's now take a closer look at how the Vikings treated wounds and injuries, particularly in battle. As fierce warriors, the Vikings were no strangers to injury. Whether it was a minor scrape or a severe battle wound, they had a set of natural remedies and methods for treating these injuries in a way that helped speed up the healing process. But the Vikings didn't just focus on the physical aspect of healing. They combined practical first aid with spiritual beliefs to ensure both the body and spirit were restored. One of the most common Viking remedies for wounds was the use of plant-based poultices. These poultices, made by crushing or grinding up medicinal plants, were applied directly to the wound to help speed up the healing process. For instance, the Vikings frequently used yarrow, a herb known for its ability to staunch bleeding and reduce inflammation. Yarrow's antimicrobial properties made it an effective choice for treating open wounds. The Vikings would crush the leaves and apply them directly to cuts, scrapes, and even larger gashes, allowing the herb to work its magic in closing the wound and preventing infection. Historians still argue about how widespread the use of yarrow was in Viking society, with some believing that it was used more in rituals than in practical healing. However, archaeological evidence suggests that the Vikings were adept at using plants for medicinal purposes, and yarrow was likely a staple in their first aid kits. Whether they knew the exact science behind yarrow's effectiveness, or if it was more a matter of tradition, the fact remains that this simple herb played a crucial role in Viking wound care. Another key ingredient in Viking wound care was juniper. As we've seen, juniper was a versatile herb that had many uses, and one of them was in the treatment of wounds. Juniper's anti-inflammatory and antiseptic properties made it a great choice for cleaning and healing injuries. Vikings would use juniper berries to make a poultice, which they would apply to open wounds, bruises, or sprains. The soothing properties of juniper were particularly helpful in reducing swelling and easing the pain associated with battle wounds. But it wasn't just herbs that played a role in Viking wound care. Vikings also understood the importance of keeping wounds clean and free from infection. Salt water, known for its natural antiseptic properties, was used to rinse and clean cuts, abrasions, and more serious injuries. Salt water was easy to obtain and could be found wherever the Vikings traveled, whether at sea or on land. A saltwater rinse would help prevent the growth of harmful bacteria, making it an effective and widely used treatment. Viking healers also used animal fats and oils in wound care. These fats were often used as salves to cover wounds and prevent them from drying out. While the Vikings didn't have the modern bandages and gauze we use today, they did have leather strips and cloths that could be wrapped around a wound to help keep it clean and protected. The Vikings were pragmatic when it came to first aid. They understood that keeping the injury covered was crucial to preventing further harm. Leather strips could also be used to create makeshift splints for broken bones, stabilizing the injury until further healing could occur. Interestingly, many of the healing methods used by the Vikings were not only practical, but also had a psychological benefit. There's a calming, reassuring quality to being treated with natural remedies, especially when they are administered with care and intention. The Viking healing process wasn't just about the treatment itself, it was about creating a sense of control, even in the chaos of battle. By using familiar herbs and methods that were passed down through generations, the Vikings were able to feel a sense of connection to their ancestors and the land around them. Healing was not just about fixing the body, it was about restoring balance to the individual's life and spirit. Historians continue to debate how much Viking medicine relied on superstition versus practicality. It's likely that there was a fine line between the two. Vikings often combined herbal remedies and physical treatments with spiritual rituals to ensure the healing process was as holistic as possible. The Vikings didn't just focus on the physical aspects of healing, they believed that their health was tied to their spiritual well-being, and thus every injury or ailment had both a physical and spiritual component that needed to be addressed. The Vikings also used runes in their healing practices. Runes were symbols believed to have magical or spiritual significance, and they were often inscribed onto stones, wood, or metal objects. Some Viking healers would carve runes into talismans or into the wounds themselves, believing that the symbols could help protect the individual from evil spirits or bad luck. This combination of physical care and spiritual protection was part of the Vikings' holistic approach to healing. They understood that both the body and the spirit needed to be cared for to achieve true well-being. As we look at the Viking approach to wound care, it's clear that their methods were practical, grounded in nature, and deeply spiritual. Their remedies were effective, not just because they knew how to treat the body, but because they understood the interconnectedness of the body, mind, and spirit. And while their tools and knowledge may have been simple compared to what we have today, the Vikings' healing practices offer a reminder that sometimes the most effective remedies are the ones that come from the earth and the heart. Having examined Viking remedies for wounds and injuries, it's now time to delve into another vital part of Viking life, their approach to hygiene. In modern society, we take cleanliness for granted, with running water, soap, and sanitary products available at our fingertips. But for the Vikings, hygiene wasn't just about staying clean, it was integral to their overall health and well-being. Given the harsh living conditions they often faced, maintaining cleanliness was crucial not only for physical health, but also for maintaining social status and spiritual harmony. The Vikings placed a high value on personal hygiene, and they were known to be exceptionally clean by the standards of their time. While it might surprise us to learn that Vikings were relatively clean for their day, historical records and archaeological findings show that hygiene was a key part of their daily life. For instance, the Vikings used a variety of tools to maintain their cleanliness, including combs, razors, and tweezers. Many of these tools were made from bone, wood, and metal, and were highly crafted. Archaeologists have even found Viking combs that were intricately designed, suggesting that grooming and cleanliness were matters of personal pride for these seafaring warriors. The Vikings were also known for their bathing rituals. While bathing might not seem like an obvious way to maintain health, for the Vikings, regular bathing was an essential part of keeping both the body and the spirit in balance. Archaeological evidence shows that the Vikings built bathhouses and hot springs, where they could immerse themselves in warm water and clean themselves after long days of work or travel. These baths weren't just about hygiene, they were also seen as a way to cleanse the soul. The Vikings believed that water had purifying properties, and that bathing could remove not only dirt but negative energy and spiritual impurities. Historians still argue whether the Vikings practiced regular bathing as part of a hygiene routine, or whether it was simply a luxury for the wealthier classes. Some believe that bathing was not as common in Viking society as we might think, given the cold climate and limited access to water. However, the evidence suggests that Vikings took their hygiene seriously, and regular baths were an important part of their routine. It was common for them to bathe at least once a week, and the use of hot springs and bathhouses suggests that bathing was a communal activity, where people would gather to cleanse both their bodies and their minds. Another aspect of Viking hygiene was the use of oils and perfumes. The Vikings weren't just concerned with staying clean, they also sought to smell good. They used various oils, such as juniper, lavender, and pine, to perfume their bodies. Juniper, in particular, was used not only for its healing properties, but also for its fragrant aroma. Vikings would rub juniper oil on their skin to keep themselves smelling fresh, and they would often use it in their hair as well. The Vikings also used animal fats to moisturize their skin, particularly in the colder months when the harsh northern climate could dry out the skin. The Vikings were also keenly aware of the importance of oral hygiene, even if they didn't have toothbrushes, as we do today. They used chewing sticks, which were twigs from trees like birch or ash. These twigs would be chewed on to clean teeth and freshen the breath. The Vikings didn't have toothpaste or modern dental care, but their chewing sticks were an effective way to maintain dental health and prevent tooth decay. In fact, the Vikings were more concerned with oral hygiene than many of the civilizations around them, and their use of these natural tools for teeth cleaning highlights their resourcefulness and understanding of personal care. The Vikings' commitment to cleanliness extended to their homes as well. Longhouses and settlements were generally kept neat and orderly, with a focus on creating a clean, safe environment. While they didn't have the luxury of modern cleaning products, the Vikings still understood the importance of maintaining a tidy living space. They used herbs and plants to freshen the air, and they took care to keep their homes free from pests and dirt. The use of juniper, for example, wasn't just for personal hygiene, it was also burned to purify the air in their homes, helping to maintain a clean and healthy living space. As we consider Viking hygiene practices, it becomes clear that their approach to cleanliness was far ahead of its time. In an era where many other cultures were less concerned with personal hygiene, the Vikings understood that cleanliness was key to overall health and well-being. Their use of baths, oils, chewing sticks and perfumes wasn't just about looking good, it was about feeling good, both physically and spiritually. The Vikings recognized the connection between the body, the mind and the spirit, and they understood that maintaining cleanliness was an important part of achieving balance and harmony in their lives. Historians often debate the extent to which Viking hygiene practices were shared across social classes, but what is clear is that hygiene was an integral part of Viking culture. For the Vikings, cleanliness wasn't just a luxury, it was a necessity for maintaining health, social status and spiritual well-being. The rituals they followed, whether it was a communal bath or a personal grooming routine, served as both practical and symbolic practices that helped them thrive in a harsh and demanding world. Now that we've discussed Viking hygiene and its significance, let's explore another vital aspect of Viking life: how they used natural oils for healing and well-being. Oils were an integral part of Viking medicine, used not only for soothing skin and promoting relaxation, but also for their therapeutic and spiritual properties. The Vikings, with their deep connection to nature, recognized the importance of oils derived from plants and animals to support both physical health and emotional well-being. These oils were used in a variety of ways, from massages and baths to ritualistic anointing, and their calming effects were a key part of the Vikings' overall healing practices. One of the most commonly used oils by the Vikings was lavender. Lavender, known for its calming and soothing properties, was used to promote relaxation and reduce stress. The Vikings would rub lavender oil into their skin to calm their nerves, relieve headaches, and even ease sore muscles after a long day of physical labor or battle. Lavender was also a key ingredient in their beauty routines, helping to maintain soft, healthy skin. The aroma of lavender has been known for centuries to have a soothing effect on the mind, and the Vikings likely understood its ability to create a peaceful atmosphere, both in their homes and within themselves. Historians still argue whether the Vikings used lavender oil as extensively as we believe, as its use wasn't always documented in written records. However, based on the numerous archaeological findings of lavender remnants in Viking sites, and their continued use of plant-based oils for health and healing, it is likely that lavender was a popular remedy among them. Lavender's calming effects, combined with its role in beauty rituals, would have made it a staple in Viking households, helping them unwind after a day filled with hard work and battle. Juniper oil, another important oil in Viking medicine, had a variety of uses. Just like lavender, juniper was not only valued for its medicinal properties, but also for its refreshing scent. The Vikings used juniper oil for a range of purposes, from treating ailments like colds and congestion to its use in ritualistic cleansing. Juniper was burned to purify the air, clear negative energy, and create a sense of peace and protection within the home. The Vikings believed that juniper had spiritual significance, and its use in their homes and healing practices reflected their desire for both physical and spiritual health. Juniper was also used for its anti-inflammatory and pain-relieving properties. When Vikings suffered from muscle aches or joint pain, they would apply juniper oil or make a poultice to soothe the pain. Juniper's ability to ease sore muscles would have been particularly useful after a day of physical exertion, and it's easy to imagine how this simple oil could have provided comfort and relief for the Vikings after long, hard days of work. Juniper's calming scent would have also helped reduce mental tension, making it the perfect oil for both physical and emotional healing. Historians are still debating the full extent of the Viking use of oils, with some suggesting that they might have used animal fats as well as plant-based oils. Animal fats, particularly from goats, were used to create balms and ointments that helped moisturize and protect the skin. Viking healers would mix animal fats with herbs and essential oils to create salves for various ailments, such as burns, cuts, and dry skin. These salves acted as protective barriers against the elements, keeping the skin soft and healthy in a harsh environment. Another oil that the Vikings used extensively was pine oil. Derived from the needles of pine trees, pine oil was used for its antibacterial and soothing properties. The Vikings would apply pine oil to cuts and bruises, as well as use it in baths to soothe tired muscles and promote relaxation. Pine oil was also burned to purify the air in their homes, creating a fresh, invigorating atmosphere. Just as lavender and juniper oil had calming effects, pine oil helped invigorate the spirit, providing a balance of relaxation and energy when needed. In addition to its therapeutic uses, oil was an important element in Viking rituals. Oils were used for anointing warriors before battle, creating a sense of protection and spiritual fortitude. The Vikings believed that the gods, particularly Odin and Thor, could be invoked through ritualistic anointing, and they used oils and herbs in their ceremonies to seek favor and strength from the gods. This practice was not just about physical healing, it was about invoking divine protection and aligning oneself with the spiritual forces that governed their world. The Vikings' use of oils was an essential part of their healing practices and daily routines. Whether it was to soothe aching muscles, relieve stress, promote relaxation, or spiritually cleanse the home, oils were a central part of their connection to nature and their healing process. The fact that these oils were derived from plants and trees that were readily available in the Viking environment speaks to the Vikings' deep respect for the natural world and their understanding of its healing powers. In many ways, Viking oils are a reminder of the simple but effective remedies that can be found in nature. While we live in a world of synthetic products and modern technologies, the Vikings were able to achieve remarkable healing through the use of plants and oils. Their healing practices were rooted in nature, and they understood the importance of balance and harmony in maintaining health. The Vikings knew that true wellness wasn't just about the body, it was about nurturing the spirit and mind too. We've now covered a wide range of Viking health practices, from their use of herbal remedies and first aid techniques, to their understanding of hygiene and spiritual healing. But as we bring this journey to a close, it's important to reflect on one final aspect of Viking medicine that ties everything together: the holistic nature of their approach to health. For the Vikings, healing wasn't just about treating a symptom or curing a disease. It was about creating balance between body, mind, and spirit, and ensuring that all aspects of a person's well-being were attended to. Whether through the use of herbs, oils, rituals, or community support, the Vikings understood that true health required harmony with nature and the forces around them. Viking medicine was not about isolating one's health to just physical well-being. It was a multi-dimensional practice that involved everything from spiritual rituals to social practices. If a Viking warrior was injured in battle, for instance, the healing process didn't end when the wound was treated. It extended to the person's emotional and spiritual recovery as well. Healing meant restoring a person's sense of self and their connection to their community and the gods. This understanding of health as a full-spectrum experience is one of the things that makes Viking medicine so fascinating and timeless. Vikings knew that maintaining balance wasn't just about avoiding illness. It was about ensuring that every part of life was in equilibrium. Their connection to nature was vital in this respect. They lived closely with the land and used its resources to their advantage, understanding that nature's gifts could be harnessed for healing. From the calming effects of lavender oil to the purifying powers of juniper, the Vikings used what the land offered to maintain physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. One key element of this holistic approach was the importance of community. Viking medicine wasn't an isolated practice. It was deeply intertwined with social structures. Healing, whether through herbal remedies or spiritual practices, often took place within the context of community. This could mean having a healer, like a Velva, perform rituals and offer remedies to a whole family or village, or it could mean sharing meals, stories, and companionship during recovery. The sense of connection and support from others was considered a crucial part of the healing process. In addition to this social aspect, the Vikings also incorporated personal rituals into their daily lives. From morning grooming routines to evening prayers, rituals served as a way to maintain mental clarity and emotional balance. In a world that could be as brutal as the Viking Age, these rituals provided moments of peace and mindfulness. They helped Vikings stay grounded in their values and reminded them of the connection between their actions, their community, and the divine. Whether it was the act of offering a prayer before battle or taking the time to brew a cup of calming herbal tea, these small acts of ritual were powerful ways to maintain a sense of order and balance. Historians still debate the extent to which Viking medicine was based on superstition versus practical knowledge, but what stands out is the Vikings' belief in the power of rituals and nature. Their reliance on herbal remedies and oils, their understanding of spiritual healing, and their commitment to hygiene and personal care were all manifestations of a deep respect for the natural world. The Vikings lived with an awareness of their connection to the earth, the gods, and each other, and this connection informed every aspect of their health. As we come to the end of this journey through Viking medicine, we can see that their approach to health was remarkably holistic, blending physical remedies with emotional and spiritual practices. They understood that true healing wasn't just about treating the body, it was about restoring balance and harmony in all aspects of life. The Viking methods may seem simple by today's standards, but they were grounded in a profound understanding of the interconnectedness of life. And as we look at modern wellness practices today, it's clear that many of the principles the Vikings embraced are still relevant. Natural remedies, holistic healing, the importance of community, and the recognition of the mind-body connection all remain key elements of modern health practices. The Vikings may not have had modern medicine, but they had an intuition and wisdom that allowed them to live in harmony with the world around them. Their healing practices were a reminder that true wellness comes from within, and from our relationship with the world we inhabit. So as you reflect on the Viking approach to health, take a moment to appreciate the timeless wisdom they shared with us. In a world that often focuses on the quick fixes of modern medicine, there's something deeply soothing about the Viking understanding of health, something that encourages us to slow down, pay attention to our bodies, and embrace the simplicity of nature. With their use of natural remedies, their respect for rituals and their deep connection to the earth, the Vikings provide us with a blueprint for a balanced, healthy life. Now let the soothing thoughts of Viking wisdom settle in as we wind down. Rest well, knowing that in the Viking tradition, healing was never a rush, it was a journey toward balance, and it was a journey that took time.